Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Android ToDo app walkthrough. In part 1, we learned how to go ahead and set up our UI and prepare for our list view. We got some of the code written for loading in the list and populating that list from the items stored in our shared preferences. So picking up where we left off, we had our button code, and we'd gotten that button using the Find View by ID and set up our click delegate so that when our user clicks on that add button, we'll be able to take the item that they've put in the edit text and add it to our list view of items in a to-do app style fashion. And I'd already walked through some of the logic that you'll need to think about here in our button click code. Okay, so let's get started with our edit text, and we get our edit text just like we got our button. Okay, and then once you have your instance of item text, you could just go ahead and get the item, that's what I'm going to name it, out of the item text by using the .text property. So whatever they've written in our box, right, whatever the user typed down here, when they clicked add, is going to go into this variable right here. So the first thing we want to check is to make sure that we actually have a non-null item, because it's really kind of difficult if the user maybe doesn't click it or type anything in here, but they click the add button, then we're going to end up with like a blank item. So if our item equals an empty string or our item equals null, then we don't want to add anything to the list. We're just going to return. All right, so this is a blank item, just return. Okay, so if everything is good, then we want to add this new item to our list. So items.add, add our item. And we also need to add it to the adapter, adapter.add item. Now, why do we do it twice? Well, first off, items, our list, is what we will be saving to our stored or our shared preferences section. So that's where we'll get the items that we're going to save, getting all tongue-twisted today. The adapter is the data adapter itself that runs the list view. So saving it here is ultimately a step towards getting it saved in shared preferences. Saving it here adds it to the UI. But we have to let that list view know that the list adapter has changed, or otherwise it won't add it, not until maybe your app is refreshed or something like that. So we honestly have to go through another step here and say adapter.notify dataset changed, and that will flag up the UI to say, hey, the data in your dataset is out of date, and you need to refresh yourself and re-pull that adapter and basically come up here and do this step again, and it will check the list, and it will check the adapter, and it will do its job. We also want to clear out that item text box so that the user can type another entry. And then on this last step, updating the shared preferences. And just like for load list, I'm going to create this in a separate method. So let's go ahead and come down here and set up a, let's see, what do I want to call it? Update stored data. Oops, stored data. Beautiful. All right, so this method updates the stored key value pairs we are holding in shared preferences. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do, so let's explain just a little bit about shared preferences. Again, just a basic text file of key value pairs. We don't know how many we have inside, but if we know them by name, right, the key, then we can access them. And that was part of the reason why we were storing the keys as numbers, because we can keep track of how many items we've had in the list. All right, so there's no way to update really a key And well, I mean, you can, but it starts to become really a hassle. So with this kind of setup, when you're using shared preferences, you're better off to just dump the entire list and save a new one every time that you have a new item added or removed from the list. And that's what this method is going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dump the current items in shared preferences. Now, you're probably asking yourself at this point, is there a better way to do this? And the answer is yes. But a lot of people like using shared preferences for storing persistent data, but honestly, if you were going to work on any kind of intensive app where you needed to constantly access the data, dropping and re-adding shared preferences all the time is a serious amount of overhead. So it's really not a good use of this kind of thing, but I get this request a lot for people want to know how shared preferences works. And so that's why I put this together. But there are some better ways that you would maybe want to store that data, maybe in a small SQLite database or something like that. But I digress. Okay, removing all the items in shared preferences. I'm actually going to do this, and it's a super easy way. So we call up our shared preferences editor interface here. And we're just going to do prefs.edit and then editor.clear and editor.commit. Done. That will dump out everything that you currently have in shared preferences. Okay, then we can add all of the items in the list to the shared preferences. So if the app is closed, we can reopen the list, right? And that's what this previous method, load list, did, right? It loaded up any items that we had in shared preferences. Okay, so we open up another editor just like we did up here. In fact, I'm just going to copy and paste. So an editor item is needed anytime we are, or we already have this, anytime we are accessing or changing the data in shared preferences. And so we have our key that keeps track of how many items we have stored in shared preferences, right? I called that item count. So we're going to put int item count, and it is going to be the current number of items in our list. So items.count. And that way we'll have an idea of how many items we currently have in shared preferences, because that's what load list uses. If we come back to this previous method, we get that out, and it is the basis for our loop and our counting and knowing how many items we're getting out. So this key right here is super important for letting us know how many items we're looking for. And so next we just, I'm going to set up a counter, and then I'm going to loop through each item in the list and add it to the shared preferences. I can't spell preferences today. List to be written. So I'm going to do a for each string item in items. So for every item that we have in here, we're going to put string. And remember, we're naming the key values as a number, but they have to be strings. And so counter.toString is ultimately what is going to get named here. Oops, item. And then we will increment our counter. Okay, so the counter starts at 0. So the first key we write is going to be key item 0, whatever item we have in there. Incrementing the next key will be key number 1, so on and so forth, so that when load list goes to pull them out, we'll start at 0, we get 0, whatever our key is, and take that item out and add that item to the list, and then it increments. You could have done a for loop here instead of a for each. I just like the elegance of a for each loop when working with a list. You're welcome to judge my logic here all you like. And then all that we do at the end, because we're adding all of these put strings, but they don't actually get written until we write to shared preferences by saying editor.apply. And so this method here will go through our list and write all of our items to shared preferences. So this method, updated stored data, is what we will call up here in our button click. So does that mean that updated stored data gets called every time someone adds something to the list? Yes. That's why I was saying that this whole method here is not very efficient, but it is definitely usable. So right now, we've actually got a little bit of stuff that you can try on your phone if you wanted to test out, or on your emulator. So I pulled up my app on my phone here, and I was able to type in the box there at the bottom, item 1, and add it to my list. And I can see the list has been populated because we have that add button click event all wired up there. And so, but one of the things that is probably going to annoy you is when you come down here and you click on this this box down here at the bottom, right? It's going to pull the keyboard up over the top of your app, and you can't see what you're typing anymore. So one of the things that we need to do, and I mentioned this in the first video, is come up here to our activity tag, and over here after the icon section, we're going to add another parameter. So after drawable icon, we're going to do comma, and then we're going to do window soft input mode equals a soft input dot adjust pan, or a soft input dot state hidden. Now what this is going to do is it's going to change the behavior of your app. So now if I run and test this out, I should be able to click on the edit text box, and instead of the keyboard coming up over the top of the app, so where I can't see what I'm typing anymore, it should push the app forward and load the keyboard underneath so I can still see what I'm typing. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, so here's my app again after making that change. The one thing I really want you to notice is that my item 1 is still in the list, and I did see my toast notification pop up down here saying that it was getting my stored items. So we can tell that our method is working and that I was able to get my item from shared preferences. But you'll notice if you come down here and you click on the edit text, that now the keyboard comes up, but the edit text is still up here. And so as I type, right, and I can't see what I'm typing, I can see it though. I can see it here in the box. It's hard to do when I have to hold my phone up, but you get the gist. Okay, so at this point, we have most of our app working. We can add items to our to-do list by using the edit text at the bottom. We can save items to shared preferences, and we can retrieve those items from shared preferences. The last thing that we want to set up is what happens when we click on those check boxes for our items in the list, because we can add all kinds of items to the list, but right now there's no way to check them off and say, hey, look, we're done. So we're going to make our on-list item click event for the list view, which is an override event. So come down here to the end of your onCreate. I'm going to put this method right here. So this is a protected override. And it'll pull up a list of all of the methods that you can override. We're looking for on-list item click if you don't want to type it all out. So we'll find it in here somewhere, on-list item click. And that will just pop that method out for us, and then we can start working on it. So this is the method that is fired when an item in the list is checked. All right, so leave the base stuff alone. We're going to add the rest of our code down here. So what we want to have happen, and if you're working on your own to-do list, you got your own ideas, by all means, modify what we're doing here. But just for the sake of demonstration, when the user clicks on the check box, the little one next to that shows up next to the item in the list view, we want to remove all checked items from the list as done, right? Because it's like a to-do app. And remove them from shared preferences so that they don't pop back up. like if the app is closed, and we want to give a confirmation alert check first so that they don't accidentally check something and then be like, no, it's gone. Okay, so we're going to do all of this inside of a particular action. And we want to make sure it happens on the same thread. So we're going to specifically do run on UI thread, open parentheses. Right, so we get open parentheses, then a set of open close parentheses, then a lambda, and then a set of curly braces. And at the end of this set of curly braces, this is where that other end of that parenthesis goes, and a semicolon. All right, so be careful with your syntax there. Make sure you got that right before we proceed. So what we are going to do is build kind of an alert dialog. This is a pop-up box kind of modal thing that will come up when we want to ask our user a question. So an alert dialog, we use a builder, and we're just going to call it builder. Call it whatever you like. So builder dot, we can go ahead and instantiate our item before we start getting into stuff. So builder equals new, alert dialog builder, and this is the context that we're working on. And so then we can start setting up our stuff. So we can set a title. I'm going to say confirm. We can set a message. So I'm going to say, are you done with this task? Question mark. We are going to set it to cancelable. So if they accidentally, click an item and then they're like, no, I didn't want to cancel it, or I don't want to do that. If they click somewhere else in the app other than on our modal, it'll just go away and we'll just cancel it. That's what this true sets that to. And then we're going to set up logic for our buttons. So we're going to have our builder.setPositive button. We're just going to say OK. And then we set up a delegate for the logic inside of here. Oops, there should be a comma here. That's why it's yelling. And I'm going to skip over this for a second and come down here, and I'm also going to set up our set negative button. And do the same thing. So cancel, delegate, all right, so if they hit cancel, we just want to return. You don't want to do anything. And then at the end, we show it. So builder.show launches, this launches the, I'm going to say modal pop-up. Okay, so in our OK delegate, this is where we want to do everything that happens with our list item click. So if they are done with the task, we want to remove the item from the list view. All right, and so we need to know the item that they clicked on, and we get that through some of these parameters that get filled in when onListItemClick is called. And so one of the more important ones in this list for us is position. And so because we're using the position as also our key in our key value pairs, so I'm going to get our item from items position, and then I can do items dot remove our item, and then I can also do adapter dot remove our item. So this will remove it from the list view. Let me update my comment, and the items list. So it won't get saved anymore, and it's no longer going to be visible in the list view. Then we're going to reset the list view so nothing is selected, because even if you have items checked and then you delete them, the list view will hold those check states and then just apply them to other items in the list if they're applicable, which is not the behavior we want. And so our instance of the list view is here under the variable L. So we want L.clearChoices. And then we also want L.requestLayout. And that will help fix any weird scroll bar issues that might come up as we remove items from the list. And then we need to update the data stored in shared preferences, which is the other reason why I created this method, because I knew we would need it in another place. So as we remove items from the list, we'll go ahead and refresh all of the things that are going on in shared preferences by calling our update stored data. And so when a user clicks on something in the list, we will pop up our alert and say, are you done with this task? If they click cancel, then nothing happens. If they click OK, then we'll remove it, we'll reset the list, we'll remove it from shared preferences. Ta-da, you go on about your day. So we can go ahead and give this a little run. Let's try to play here and see if we can make our list work the way that we want it to work. Okay, so here we are with our item, one item loaded. All right, so I can add another item to the list. So you can see I typed in second item, right? And I did that using the box at the bottom down here. So now I have a second item. And so I can click on the check boxes here, if I can see what I'm doing. All right, and there is our little modal pop-up. Are you done with this item? Okay, cancel. If I click cancel, then everything should continue to work as expected here. But if I check it and say, yes, I'm done with this task, and click OK, now it's gone from the list, right? All gone, just the one item in the list. Now I should be able to close the app and reopen it and see that my one item is still there. So let me find it in my, I'm just going to run it right off the phone, so I'm trying to find it in my list here. And there we are. And when it loaded up, I got the little toast notification that I was getting my saved data. So I hope this has been fun. Fun walkthrough of creating a simple little to-do app, piecing together some of this stuff on what we've been learning about using list views and adapters and shared preferences and different UI controls. And by all means, go get this code off of my GitHub if you would like. But of course, I always think that you learn more if you do it yourself. So challenge yourself a little bit and try putting this together. And of course, you can always make your own little changes. Make it your own. Maybe you don't like the way that I have used the UI control, or you don't like the modal pop-up, or you want to change some behavior, change some layout, change the theme. I always work in the dark theme, but you're welcome to make those kinds of changes as well. If you're having any trouble with getting the app working, by all means, leave me a comment on the video, and I'll see what kind of help I can give you. Stay tuned for next time. We'll start putting together some different things. I think I'm going to start working a little more with some sound. And I wanted to start getting into doing some things like sliders and working with the GPS. So I think I'm going to get away from these more data-heavy apps into some more cool like UI control apps. So stick around for that, and I will continue to post videos throughout the summer since I'm not teaching. But if you do have a request, I'd love to hear it. Until next time, thanks.